Welcome to the podcast. Today, my guest is Stuart Stuart. Stuart Stuart. Is that a real name or is that a stage name?
It is a real name. I changed my name to be that back in the 90s.
Okay.
And I'd say it's the kind of thing that you do in your 20s that you might not do in your 40s. It's something I've had to explain ever since. Back in that era, I was going to either be in advertising or music. I wasn't sure which path would take
It
hold.
makes the name stand out.
Yeah, and it was like, there was an entire story behind it. Basically, my mother's maiden name was Stuart.
Oh, okay.
And she'd reverted to that. People were getting confused, thinking, oh, you must be Stuart Stuart. And I was like, no, my second name's this. And eventually I thought, you know what, maybe it could be. And yeah, I still have to explain it every time I want to talk to Telstra or the electricity company, or people are like, oh, you must have a stutter or whatever, you know. But anyway, I guess, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's been probably a good thing, a memorable thing.
It is a memorable thing.
And I realised back in the day, I mean, I had, you know, when I was cutting my teeth in the 90s, like Magoo was a big deal for me, in terms of a guy that was like a few years ahead of me. And I was like, he's got a funny name. I should have a funny name too, you know? So there's a little bit of that. He was a bit of an inspiration, and he still is, you know?
Yeah. You are a music producer. What does a music producer do?
It's sort of a nebulous term, you know? Because there are some producers, like I guess back in the day, there were producers that would simply sit on the couch at the back of the room. This is the kind of classic Rick Rubin model. And he would never touch the equipment. He didn't know how to mic things. He wasn't an engineer. He didn't even necessarily know much about, like he couldn't necessarily play an instrument. I mean, I'm not sure if he can or he can't, but he doesn't tend to. His role is purely, I'll listen to the songs, I'll tell you which are the best songs. I'll tell you this part's too long, this part's too short. You know, there's some interesting documentaries of him where he's working with the Dixie Chicks or Metallica or whatever, and he doesn't even go to the studio. They just bring him the demos, and he shows them, they show him the demos, and he tells them what to go and record, you know. That can be a producer. But a producer can also be someone that is completely hands-on, more of an engineer, setting up all of the mics, being completely involved with every aspect of the sound, and they never make any comments on the songs at all, you know. So that's also called a producer. And I think in the modern parlance, it's been more like a little bit more of an EDM sort of laptop guy making beats and all that sort of stuff. People call that a producer, you know. But for me, I've always sort of modeled myself on like the Max Martin, Mutt Lange kind of idea of a producer, in that I'll fill any gap that's required. So on a lot of the things that I work on, I will play everything. I can do that. Sometimes I'm working with band and I play nothing, you know?
One of the ideas that I had at a producer's job would be, you've got a certain budget to do a recording, and the producer's job was to make sure that the recording was done to the best you possibly could within that budget.
I think that is part of it at the highest level. I mean, for me, I'm purely like, well, my price is this much per song, so it's not really an issue. I mean, I guess it's my job to make sure it happens within that time, but that's more of my...
Well, it's on you because it's like you've given a fixed price.
Yeah, I've given a fixed...
So if you spend more time or less time, that's on you.
Yeah, I mean, but I think my model's a little different. Some people thought I was insane at the beginning for saying, well, you know, the price is going to be this much for a song. Other producers are like, you can't say how long it's going to take to make the song. You don't know. And I'm like, well, I've got to roll the dice on it, you know. Sometimes it'll take longer, sometimes it won't take as long, but it sort of averages out to this time. But in general, I allow more time than I think I'm going to need, and so I can lavish more times on
I guess
things.
From the client's point of view, then they know they've got a fixed figure to work to as well.
Yeah, well, people have always found that really popular, I think, or appealing. And the most common thing I saw when I got started was people would have an idea. They would go into a studio, like back in the day for me in Brisbane, it was like Red Zeds and places like that. And I even had this experience with bands that I was in. We'd go in and we'd be like, well, we're going to record 3 songs in 2 days or whatever it was going to be. And we'd worked out, 6 hours in that we were still setting up the drums, We just, people don't have any idea how long these kind of things take.
Yeah.
And then we'd go and record the acoustic guitar and we'd be like, well, this will only take 5 minutes. But then we record it and the guy was like, well, that's not in time. It needs to be more in time. Redo this. Oh, no, we want to do this fancy little finger picking bit. Oh, you know what I mean? And everything just blew out. And eventually it would be like at the end, okay, well, we've got the last hour, let's do the vocals, And this would happen all the time. Or it'd be like, we've got the last half hour, let's do the mix, And
it was rushed.
It would always be, the vocals and the mix would be at the end, which were the most important parts, really, and they would always come at the end. So I kind of thought originally, it was partly for my own benefit because I never wanted to compromise what I was doing because people were running out of money to do it, I wanted to say, it takes this long to make the quality that I want to make and that I think we need to make to be competitive. So this is the price. If you can pay it, then awesome. Come and work with me. This is how long it'll take. So at the moment, I'm working on sort of, it takes 5 days to do 2 songs. Other people work a lot faster than that. Maybe Mutt Lang will work a lot slower than that. But for me, that's kind of what it takes to get to where I want to get to, and primarily to have a lot of time for vocals. And I think that's something that's always been different about what I do. I expect a lead vocal takes kind of 3-4 hours to record. Other people maybe think it takes an hour, But I think that's why I have a lot of repeat customers, is because people don't get that sort of care and attention on their vocals. That's what I've always tried to really, because I think other producers come more from the engineering background where they're more interested in the gear and the drums and the guitars and all that stuff. And I love all that stuff too. But I think of myself more as a song producer. I'm trying to think about how it's going to translate to the people, I'm always trying to consider that beyond any other technical concerns. And I know that getting the vocal right will be 90% of it. Obviously the melody and the lyrics and the song structure and all of that stuff has to be good, and I work hard on that too. I allow time for that. But ultimately, people will not give a shit about my hi-hat sound. Do you know what I mean? But they will hear that little bit of extra character that I was able to get out of the vocalist. That little bit of extra time I spent comping, trying to find the stuff where it just has a little bit of humanity, a little bit of extra
emotional context.
Yeah. And I find that, I try to pay much more attention to how non-musicians relate to music. Because I think as musicians, all of our friends are musicians. We're so worried about what our musician friends are going to think about what we're doing. And we get kind of wrapped up in all of that. But whenever I have the opportunity to see non-musicians react to a song, I'm watching for what they're listening to. And absolutely, they're listening to the voice and they're listening to the lyrics. And I think this is what songwriters miss so often, is that so many listeners are like, they expect that the lyrics that they're hearing represent what that singer's really feeling and wants to communicate to the world. People kind of miss that, and they spend ages on things that maybe don't matter as much, But I guess I try to allow time for all of it. I'm not derelict in my duty of getting a good kick drum sound, but I feel like in this era, that stuff is just, it's easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The other side of the coin of that is, what is a good sound?
Yeah.
Like sometimes something that sounds quirky and different, where you might look at it and go, that's ugly, but it actually works.
Yeah.
I remember I did a one particular session with Louis Shelton, and I was engineering and he was playing guitar. He was producing. We were doing an album for the Wolverines, and he was playing guitar through one of those red pod kidney bean.
Yeah, I used to have one of those.
And I was a little taken aback. And, he'd play a part and I'd be like, surely you could get a better sound. Anyway, but he played it several parts and then you push the faders up and it was like magical. It sounded amazing.
Yeah.
And I guess it's that thing of, he knew exactly what he was doing and the sounds that he was getting and how they would add together.
Yeah.
And I guess it's that thing if you can isolate any one individual thing, it doesn't necessarily. Yeah. It's the big picture you've got to look at.
Yeah. Well, I have that experience too. Like usually, if I'm doing a thing where I'm playing everything on a record, I don't necessarily like people in the room with me while I'm doing that because I might be working on a sound, and they might be like listening, going, "What the fuck is this? This sounds horrible. Like, what are you doing?" And I'm thinking in my mind, no. This is going to be way in the background. It's going to be soaked in reverb. I'm cutting all the bottom end out of it. It's a texture that I'm working on. This is not meant to be up front. And I suppose that's kind of the producer's ear, is understanding what sounds go together and how they go together.
And the frequency content and where that sits.
Yeah, and also listening to a track as you go and knowing when it's finished. This is one of the most difficult things to learn, I think, is when you've got enough and when you don't have enough, And I'd say the majority of what I hear out there in the world at this sort of similar level to where I'm up to, I guess you'd call it more at the indie level, is people don't quite finish things enough, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like if they added a shaker and a tambourine, suddenly that chorus has got some more momentum, Or they've got a rhythm guitar part, but they don't have any top guitar part that just kind of like suddenly the chorus has... it's expanded from this to this, or things like that. Or, okay, there's a frequency there that could be a synth pad, Like, I think that's just something that you get with maturity and listening. Some people just get it naturally, but I think I've sort of grown into that over time. Your ears grow. The more you listen to things, and sometimes it's just like there's two sounds, but they're the perfect sounds. It's a bass and a kick drum. And for some reason, that with the vocal just fills the entire spectrum. It just works, and it's always kind of like I don't think it's about plugins and gear and all of that stuff. It's about recognizing when something feels like it fills the speakers, And that's still something I think about every day. Like when I hear something come on Spotify or whatever, and it sounds amazing, and I'm like, fuck, there's nothing in this. There's like three things. Why does this sound so big? Like, why does this sound so good? And that's to me why producing is the most exciting part of the music business, is because there's no end to it. Like there's no, I guess that's true with any musical pursuit, like if you play guitar and you feel like, well, I've learned everything. You haven't, you've never learned everything.
No. I think it's one of those things, the more you learn, you realise there's actually so much more to learn.
Absolutely. And with producing, I haven't lost any of I've been doing it for more than 20 years now, but I haven't lost any of my enthusiasm for being better at it. I don't feel like I've peaked and I'm as good as I need to be. I feel like I still need to be much better, You
would have seen a lot of changes in that time from when you first started. What was the sort of stuff when you first started that you were recording and working on? And how has that changed over to where we are today?
The first things I had a 4-track recorder. Was the first. I go back that far, So I remember when I first moved over to computer and suddenly I had 8 tracks of audio, and this was, it sounds archaic, but I wasn't working in big studios. I was always working at home. I never worked in a proper...
What were you using back then?
For software?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I started with Cubase, which is why I'm still on Cubase to this day.
Okay.
Because I was always a Windows guy, not a Mac guy. Mm-hmm. I'd kind of built my own computers and I knew a lot about Windows machines. And Cubase was the thing that was kind of on Windows, whereas Pro Tools was the Mac kind of thing. So I started there, and it was... I guess it was just a phenomenon to be able to suddenly see the waveforms and see the bits and pieces and move them around on a screen. And I think everybody in that era went through that. And obviously there was a lot of holding out of like, oh, we should go back to tape, and tape sounds better. But just the ability to, the convenience was just, it was inexorable. You couldn't stop that, And I think over time, just my skills developed as the software developed. It was suddenly like, well, I only had 8 tracks, but I only had 8 ideas. You know what I mean? I had 8 things to do, and then gradually, obviously, the software and the computers and got better and better and better.
So we virtually had unlimited tracks almost at the moment, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I mean, now we kind of have the opposite problem. Like, a lot of what I do is I'll mix stuff for different people that they've recorded at home, and some, they'll send me, 250 tracks,
Wow.
But it's not because they need those tracks. It's more they just didn't make any decisions, There's one guy I work with in particular, and I mean, every time he'll send me like 8 synth pads for the chorus. And I'm like, what are, and really he's just asking me to choose one. Like, that's what he's doing, But there's no skill. I mean, I love the guy, but there's no skill in just recording a bunch of shit and making no decisions. Like, part of the key part of being a producer is making the decisions. It's going, this is good, this isn't as good, That's what it's about. And it's going, well, this synth pad fills the spectrum the way we want to, this one doesn't. But I think that's the thing. It was probably, I mean, if you've seen the documentary Sound City, it's kind of like they talk about how recording back then separated the men from the boys and all this kind of stuff. And I don't put it like that, but I would say the limitations of what recording used to be made you make more decisions. It made you be more definitive. It's like, well, we only have 24 tracks, therefore this sound has to be here, and then this has to be, you had to arrange things more,
Yeah.
So I guess I still have a little bit of that mentality coming into things. It's not to say sometimes my projects don't blow up to 250 tracks. Well, they really don't. But the thing is that I'm putting something there because it's meant to be doing something. It's filling. It's got a purpose.
Yeah. You're not recording parts just in case.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing is sometimes if you're adding, like, okay, so you have the perfect guitar part, and then you add another one. That's taking away from this one over here, Yeah, everything just needs to have its place in the mix,
Can you remember the first time that you thought, oh, I'm gonna make music my career? Obviously, it would have started out as being a musician.
Yeah, well, for me, it was my mum was a big music fan. Always had a lot of records. A lot of the good stuff, like, a lot of Beatles and, a lot of great 80s music, Lionel Richie, Michael Jackson, all that kind of good stuff. And I remember as a kid, we only had 2 TV channels back in Armidale where I grew up. I mean, probably most places. And really, that's what I did most of the time was I put on records, and I was already, when I was 5, I'd go off into a dreamland, I'd be imagining all kinds of worlds that were happening within that song, And I guess I was sort of aware even back then that I was listening to music in a way that a lot of my friends weren't listening to it. With all the really good musicians that I've worked with, we just have a way of, we just get inside songs in the way that other people don't, It's like when we're enjoying something, we don't want to be spoken to. We don't want somebody, or like, my wife drives me crazy because she'll sing along to a song and I'm kind of like off in my own dreamland, you know what I mean? But but even then I would look through the album covers and I'd be fascinated by, oh, somebody played keyboards, oh, somebody played guitar, or someone else played bass, or, I didn't even know what bass was at that time, but I could see that there were all of these people that made it happen, And then I'd look at a Michael Jackson record, which had so many players on it, and I'd say, oh, this person played here and they didn't play on that. And I don't know, I just started putting this sort of stuff together. But I think the key moment for me was when I heard Dire Straits' Money for Nothing, and just the intro to that song, just had an effect on my brain. And I just went to my mum and I said, I want to play guitar. And she just said, okay. for some reason. And I just knew it. I remember that so clearly, that moment. And
How old were you then?
I was only 9. And it took a long time from there to when I was doing anything on guitar that represented...
Did you have formal lessons?
Yeah, I did. So, the first thing is, my mum wasn't musical. I mean, she liked music, but she didn't really know where to start. So I went off to get classical guitar lessons, had a nylon string guitar. And I mean, I suppose I was so young and naive that I didn't realize I'm not going to sound like Mark Knopfler on this nylon, this $28 nylon string guitar going to the classical guitar teacher. I was learning green sleeves and whatever else, And I think I got kind of, I was kind of getting disheartened because it wasn't, I mean, at 9, you don't have that maturity of realizing that, you need to learn the basics, and a nylon string's sort of good for your fingers to start on and all that stuff. Eventually I got a better guitar teacher. It was still kind of a much older guy. He was into like real 50s rock and Chuck Berry, but I started to put together that, oh, okay, actually, because I was also like, I loved AC/DC and all these sort of things. I was like, oh, okay, there's a lot of crossover between this Chuck Berry stuff and what Angus Young's doing. And then I got an Angus Young tab book, and I'm like, oh, some of these old fogey songs that I'm learning, oh, okay, I can play this, I started to put it together. And then I got another guitar teacher who was kind of like a young 22-year-old dude who was like really into Van Halen and Metallica and all this sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's when I really started to do the things I wanted to do on guitar, That's when I was getting into Satriani and Vai and all this. So, I mean, I came from a real kind of like, metalhead, hair metal, shred guitar, 80s kind of world. That was the beginning, that was kind of the progression.
Yeah. So around that metal era, was that your teenage years?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of...
Was that your, like, rebellious phase?
I suppose it was. I had such a wide variety of musical tastes, even as a kid. But when I was younger, it was all about Countdown, mm-hmm. and so much kind of like... It was like sort of Icehouse was like the ultimate kind of thing for me, because... It was guitar, there was rock in there, but also so much synth stuff,
It was a good blend of the two.
Yeah, and I think kind of growing up in that era, I mean, every era has really influential music, but that in particular was the time when synthesizers kind of came of age and became so prominent. And I think music production as well became way more colorful and expansive, because it obviously there was Moog synthesizers and things like that in the 70s and aspects of that, but particularly in the 80s, like you could hear any sound on any record and you had no idea what it was, and suddenly you're hearing this great rock riff and then you're hearing this weird synth sound, and I think that just kind of expanded the world for me, So I had all of that, but I guess the metal phase was like, actually, I remember coming down here to the Gold Coast on schoolies, and I got the And Justice for All Metallica record on tape, and I put it on, and it's so abrasive and nasty. I'm like, fuck, this is really going to piss off my mum, like. And listening to that now, I'm like, oh man, what did I even like about this? You know what I mean? Like, but I think at the time I was listening to Slayer and Megadeth and Metallica. I suppose it was sort of like...
A level of aggression?
Yeah, it was a level of aggression. It was that sort of... But I guess it was the other thing about when you're sort of a gawky teenager, you're finding your little safety world, you know what I mean? You're finding your thing of like, I'm going to school and I'm not the cool kid and whatever, but, I have this music and you don't fucking have it. I've got it, And it's sort of armor, if you like, like I'd write Metallica on my bag and you can't fuck with that, it's sort of that, there's definitely an aspect of that was part of it. But I think it was also, I was into guitar and I wanted to play, that's where all the interesting guitar things were happening.
Yeah.
I wasn't evolved enough to be into Eric Johnson or something, but, yeah, but I guess even the Vai and the Satch stuff, it was all still vaguely in a kind of rock metal type world, So And then I mean I had various bands around then. Like I had a band from kind of grade 8 onwards, you know, and we were just always trying to play Def Leppard or AC/DC or whatever was playable for us at that time.
So you had some kindred spirits.
Yeah. And I mean,
someone to share it with?
I mean, it was just like any friend that I had, I would just rope them in. Like I was always that guy, you know. I was like, I had a best friend. And I'm like, you should learn drums. And he's like, I don't really. You should learn drums. Learn them. So he got, and his parents were probably like, oh shit, what the fuck? Please don't. But yeah, we did get drums. Then we had another friend. I'm like, you should learn bass. What's a bass? Learn bass. And just like the band I had were just my 3 best friends.
Yeah.
That I think, I suppose that was a sort of early indicator of what I might do, in that I could motivate other people to get into music, you know? Like even if they weren't, I was always kind of the prime mover. And all of those people all fell off their instruments, you know, shortly after, or like, you know, a few years after, but I was always going to carry on, you know? Like they wouldn't have picked up a bass or guitar, or, you know, for all this time, but that was a thing back in the day, yeah.
When you left school, what did you do?
I was always making music or doing something involved in music, whether I was in a band or, you know, trying to work out home recording or whatever I was doing, or I was learning to play some piano, or I guess I was smart enough at the time to realize that I'm probably not going to be a professional musician. It's probably unlikely. Because I got a wide variety of interests as well, but one of them was writing and advertising. Mm-hmm. So I went to uni and got an advertising degree.
So there's a level of creativity there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted to do something creative, I suppose, you know. But at the time, I was still playing in a covers duo. I was trying to put together an originals band, doing something or other. I was still writing songs. It was always part of it, and I guess maybe I had a bit of an idea I might write jingles or something. I could try and bring these things together. But a huge part of that phase was in the 3rd year of that course, we got to do electives. And, you know, I chose to go and do some music subjects over at Kelvin Grove QUT. And you were allowed to choose anything, basically. Mm-hmm. And I went over there and I was kind of a fish out of water, because all the other music students who I really envied at the time, I realized when I got there, I was like, oh, I wish I was here. Like, you guys get to just hang out and be musicians all day. Like, I just realized that I wasn't in my element, you know, I wasn't where I wanted to be. And I got there and I just, like, I did some courses on music composition on computer and sequencing and things like that. And I came in and I was already like quite a bit more advanced than the other kids there, because I'd been doing all of this at home, you know. So I came in and got really good results in that. And I think they were a little bit like, who's this fucking guy? What's he even doing here, you know? But I loved those classes so much that I just thought, I just need to be in this somehow. I didn't know how at the time or how I was going to do it, but it wasn't like the rest of uni. Like, I would go there and, yeah, the other music students seemed to be like, oh, fuck, another class. And in fact, they didn't seem to enjoy this part of it. They wanted to play their sax or whatever they did. But I was like, this is it for me. But the thing that really changed it after that was, so around that time, somebody was advertising like songwriting courses. Like, it was just like a weekend songwriting course. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I want to do this. And I went and did the course. And at the end, people would play their songs, and then the teacher or the instructor would say, so guys, any thoughts on this song? And everyone else would be like, oh, it's good, I like it. And I'd be like, well, the second verse could maybe be this. And I thought the chorus maybe, like the melody, and I had all these thoughts, and I'm like, God, I'm being an annoying prick right now. Like, really pissing people off. But I just couldn't help myself. I did have all of these ideas.
Like Jessie was saying in her podcast, he hated my baby.
The critical part of that was, so I said that, and people seemed to be firstly a little bit surprised that I was so opinionated on this stuff. But then I had quite a few people come up afterwards and say, oh, can you listen to this other song? What do you think of this? You know, and I'd realized that for them, they'd never got any genuine feedback on what they were doing. It's very hard as a musician to get any real proper constructive feedback on your music, like what you're particularly songwriting, you know?
Because people, I guess, they don't want to offend you.
Well, you're asking your friends and family, and they may not like it or they may like it, but whatever they say, it's not going to be helpful. If they don't like it, they're not going to tell you why or what you could do. Whereas I guess I can just come at it from the point of view of, well, here are the conventions of songwriting. Here's the maths. Here's the musical maths. Okay, this is like working just off these principles is going to get us over here to begin with. Like, and then we can let our genius and our creativity take over. But let's just get the basics right. Okay,
The building blocks.
yeah, like this song, this key's too low, this verse is too long, this tempo's too slow, this song's too long. We don't have a pre-chorus. We need to build more, like just aspects that are kind of to me always obvious. Of these are the things that can be done, you know? And somebody said to me in that course, oh, you're kind of like a producer, you know? And that was the first time it had twigged to me that that's something I might do, you know? I hadn't even, like, to be honest, hadn't even thought of what a producer was or what they did. I might have been aware that there were producers, but I was much more in a sort of musician perspective, you know what I mean? Like, as far as I was concerned, when Metallica went to make the Black Album, that was Metallica making it. I didn't ever think of what Bob Rock was doing, you know? And that was the first time I thought, oh, okay, this is something I could do. And then after that, there were just like, so I was writing a lot of songs, but I was never a singer. I couldn't really sing. I could kind of sing enough to show people what I wanted, but I never had a great vocal tone. And I would have other people come in and, you know, sing these little songs I was making and writing at home. And they'd come and sing, and then they'd say, oh, I've got a song. Or they'd be like, oh, you're making, I kind of like that song you're making. Oh, you kind of know how to do drums and whatever. And they'd say, oh, I've got this song. And then I'd be like, oh, well, we could do this and maybe move this around. And it kind of just, it was a very organic kind of thing, you know? It was sort of like just having people come in and show me their material, and then I'd be like, let's change it around, let's do this, let's, you know. And I just found I had a certain way of encouraging people to do it, you know. And I've seen there are plenty of people that may begin as producers or want to be producers. They, for whatever reason, they think it's an appealing career, but they miss the psychology of it, the aspect of like,
how do you get the most out of someone?
Yeah.
How do you get the best performance?
Yeah,
out of another person?
And how do you take something that they may be very attached to, or they may have had a certain way for a long time, and gradually move them to a position where they're open to it being different, you know? And I've worked with every variety of person, you know, from people that I've given them some very gentle feedback on their song and they started crying straight up, you know? Wow. That they'd been criticized that harshly, you know? And other people that are just like, okay, whatever, I'll change anything. You're the expert, you know what to do, you know? And that is such a key part of what I do, you know. I mean, there's many other producers or recording engineers or studios where you'll go there and they just go, well, here's the song, let's record it, you know, and they don't even consider it's their responsibility to go, what the fuck does this lyric mean? This doesn't mean anything, or why is this chorus so shit? There's no chorus, you know, like. But I've always seen that as my job, like that. I think of that as the most important part of what I do, and I feel like that's the most unique thing that I can do. Like, I don't think I can, I'm not going to, you know, have a drum sound that's better than any other drum sound that's ever existed, you know. I can do it very competently, but that's not where I'm going to win, you know. Or even when it comes to the mix, I'm going to do a good mix, but lots of people can do a good mix, you know. Where I'm going to win is that I've got kind of a deep knowledge of music theory, a deep interest in why songs work, a deep understanding of, you know, the mechanics of songwriting and arrangement. And I think I've also got an ability to talk to people in a way that'll gradually let them open up. It's always firstly letting them know, I really like what you're doing. You're competent. You're good at what you do, you know? So they know that you're on their side. And then saying, oh, you've done so well here, you've done so well here, but, oh man, if we did this thing would be next level. Let's give this a try. What do you think, you know? Okay, and then firstly they may be like, oh, it's a bit different. I'm like, let's play it 2 more times. Just give it a chance. Let it sit in your brain. Give it a chance to fly in the same way that this other thing's been flying for months, you know? And I find with most people there's very few times I don't get my way, you know? But it's not because I'm bossy or demanding, because in the end I'm always aware that this is their music. It's their name on it. Like my name might be somewhere, but nobody cares about my name on it. It's their, this is what they're going to live with, you know?
When it comes to that side of things, you're in some ways having a part of the writing process. As a producer, do you get a songwriting credit? How does that work?
Look, I tend not to claim a songwriting credit, whereas other people might, you know. I feel like it's part of my job. Look, there've been times when I've pretty much written the verse and the chorus lyrics for somebody because they were struggling to get there. And I go, well, I don't know, here's something, you can use it if you want, whatever, you know. And then I find that they use it, you know. And perhaps I could claim a credit, but I feel like with most people I'm working with, the royalties are so low, the economics are so tough. I don't want to be another hand in their pocket, you know? Yeah. I mean, partially because it's kind of complicated to chase it all up and all that sort of stuff, but also I just want to kind of keep it clean and neat from the point of view of like, if I'm saying to them, we really should use these lyrics, and they think I have a motivation that I'm trying to get a cut by putting my lyrics in, then they might not do it.
Yeah.
So I try to take that factor out of it as much as possible. I mean, often what happens, like it just happened this week with someone, I suggested enough lyrics for them to say, well, okay, I think you should be a co-writer. And I'm like, okay, cool. Put me down as a co-writer. That's fine. What about 20%, you know?
Yeah.
If it's something where people have come in and have said, write a song with me, sure, great. If it's a thing where they have just come in and say, give me some advice on my song, and my advice is kind of lapsed into a point of like I'm writing some of the song, then I don't feel it's ethical of me to make a claim, particularly when I'm pushing hard for that to be the change. But if they want to offer me something from there, then that's okay too. Yeah. But I just haven't sweated much of that over the time. I've just felt like it's more important to get a good product. It's more important to build a good relationship. And for them, like I find if people trust me with their music, they'll come back and come back and come back, you know? And that's what I've been trying to do over time, is just have a real staple of people out there that I enjoy working with, but who also really trust me and know that I have the best intentions for what they're doing.
You've had a reasonable amount of success with some of the artists. What are some of the successes that you've had?
Well, I guess the first thing that really happened was the Veronicas was the first thing. I mean, I'd had a few cool things happen before then, a little bit of record label interest from this person and management deal for this person and whatever. But the first real thing that was exciting was when the Veronicas came in, we worked on a bunch of tracks, and then huge record deals kind of came out of that, you know? Mm-hmm. And it sort of made me realize at that point, oh, okay, I can take something, I can develop it, and then I can showcase it, you know? I don't think at that point, I mean, this is going back to 2002, something like that. I probably wasn't a finisher at that point, if you know what I mean. Like the demos I was making were really good, but it wasn't quite at a point where, like, they went off and made their first singles with Max Martin, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I wasn't going to compete at that level.
Yeah, not with Max Martin, no.
And particularly in that era when record labels probably wouldn't let you do that anyway. Like, if they were going to put that much money into something, I mean, the Veronica's record deal was $2 million. They weren't going to let me do it in my carport, you know what I mean? Like, when I'd done nothing up until that point. But that certainly brought me a lot more work over time. And then I had a variety of, you know, other things happen. There was a band called Small Mercies that was signed on Sony, and we went to LA, made a record, and did a bunch of things like that. And the next thing that happened was the Sheppard thing. And it was funny how that came to me, because their dad called me and said, "Oh, our family doctor recommended you because you're the guy that does family bands." I'm like, "Oh, am I?" And because I'd done the Veronicas thing, I apparently had a reputation amongst the medical community that I was the family bands guy. Anyway, so they came in and, you know, we just clicked straight away. It just worked immediately. We just had the right dynamic. And, you know, we had a few things happen, but then we had this song called Let Me Down Easy. And just something miraculous happened with that just never happens, which is that they went on and did a spot on the morning show, or whatever it was called at the time. I think that show's still on. I don't know who's even watching TV at that time, but you know, it was a gig that you could get reasonably easily. You know, you probably know about this, where, you know, like they're looking for some musical entertainment every day, and, you know, they've got all sorts of random stuff there, and they got connected to that somehow. And it was David Campbell who was hosting that show. Then he had a spot on radio on WSFM or something like that, and he just loved the song that they'd played, this Let Me Down Easy song, that he just started spinning it. And then
which is very rare these days. Because most of that stuff's so programmed.
Didn't happen in those days either. It was just like, what's happening? And then that kind of just got spread around, and suddenly we were getting all of this airplay. It was really a lightning strike, you know. And that did really well. And I honestly thought, okay, well, that's it. We did it. I thought that was about as far as that was going to go, and that was good enough. You know what I mean? And then not so long after that, they brought in a song called Geronimo, which was called Project Geronimo at the time, I think. And, you know, we worked that up, and it was like just one of the other songs that we were working on at the time. It wasn't like, well, this is the song. It wasn't not like that. We had lots of songs that we were excited about at the time. And I remember you know, as we were kind of basically we were finishing an album at that time off the back of the Let Me Down Easy momentum. And around that time they got Michael Chugg got involved as their manager. And I remember that they came in and said, oh yeah, we signed a management deal with this guy, Michael Chugg. Do you know him? I'm like, you fucking kid. And I'm like, when did this happen? They're like, oh yeah, about 6 weeks ago. Were you gonna tell me this is
big news?
This is a big fucking deal.
Yeah.
He doesn't even manage people. Like he at the time he wasn't really managing other people. I thought he was winding down, you know, but not at all. And anyway, I first got the hint that sort of something was going to happen with Geronimo, because I was sending through progress mixes to Chugg and his team, and they're like, yeah, that's cool, but we just want to know where this Geronimo song's at. Is that almost finished, or what's going on with that? And I'm like, oh, okay, you guys think this is something, do you? Okay, cool. And it's just, I guess the thing is, I should know as a producer that this was obviously going to be a big song, but I kind of approach every song with like, well, this could be a big song. I mean, I don't know.
It is a weird thing sometimes. I mean, as I know with my own stuff that I've recorded, it's odd sometimes the songs that you think, oh, that song's not going to make the cut, and that ends up being the big song.
Yeah.
So obviously people see things differently.
We made it the best we could. I mean, a few things that happened were like, for example, in the original demo, Amy had this part that went, bombs away, bums, and it only happened right at the end, one time. And I was like, that's got to happen more, And there was stuff like that. And there was a whole bridge part that we cut out, and there was a whole bunch of stuff of rearranging. I think that was probably the best contribution I made to that song, was just finding, well, here are the good bits, let's arrange them properly. And it was kind of tricky to arrange because there were a lot of parts that could be the hook, And we eventually kind of layered them all in a certain way. But yeah, I think that was, we kind of knew it was cool and it was different, but it wasn't necessarily like, this is obvious. I mean, never go into...
I'll give you another example. I did a podcast with Chris McKelvey. His dad was Red McKelvey, and he played on Girls on the Avenue.
Oh, yeah.
And Girls on the Avenue was the B-side of the single.
Yeah. It's so common.
It wasn't meant to be the song.
Yeah.
But it was such a huge hit for him.
Well, the number of times like that you hear, even going back to Def Leppard and Mutt Lange, they'd finished the record, and then Joe Elliott, the singer, comes in and starts playing Pour Some Sugar on Me on acoustic guitar, just in the background, not even trying to play it to anyone. And Mutt turns around and goes, that's the best fucking song on this record. We have to do it,
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, Joe was like, oh, this is just the thing I'm just kicking around. It's nothing, Like we don't, I guess the thing is I wouldn't put it like I was so into it or involved in it that I didn't have any perspective on it. It wasn't quite like that. But it was more just like, I sort of feel like, well, everything I'm doing could be a hit and everything I'm doing could be nothing. I don't have I would never finish something and go, well, this is going to be huge, or I'd finish something going, well, this is going to be nothing. I don't see it that way. I just try to make the best out of everything that I'm doing, you know? And after that, it just, that came out, and the speed at which it took off was just mind-blowing to me. Like Chug came to us, and it had come out and was starting to do well. I think it was already on radio and whatever, and Chug said, oh, this will be number one in 2 weeks. And I said, fuck, man, get serious. Like, it wasn't a possibility to me.
Yeah.
And it was actually 3 weeks. So 3 weeks later, it went number one. And I remember when George, singer in Sheppard, came in, and I remember that day, that afternoon, and he just got the call from Aria saying we'd gone number one. And it was kind of an out-of-body experience, to be honest.
So it was the first number one for you?
Yeah. In that era, it was much more possible for an Australian artist to do that. Mm-hmm. It's much harder to get to that now as an Australian artist, which we can go into if you want.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Why is it hard for an Australian artist to break through on radio now? Is it because radio is not as significant, or is radio much more controlled? I know that with programming, the people who decide what gets played on radio is generally now it used to be station by station, but now it's networked.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it, but it's also that they're basing a lot of their decisions based on Spotify. And we're talking about a situation where Spotify is going to be, it's going to be 85% international artists on that top 50. And there's no, I mean, there is the quota system of radio where they're meant to play a certain number of Australian songs, but they tend to just jam all those songs, or they just jam them all between midnight and 6 a.m., stuff like that. But it's very difficult to come in as an Australian artist and immediately be streaming what, Chapel Roan or Sabrina Carpenter or, these kind of things are streaming. And if you can't get those sort of streams like first or second week in because you haven't built any momentum, then you're not on that chart, and then you're not on radio. So it's a vicious cycle. Like, where do you get your start?
You have to have a massive breakthrough in order to break through.
Back in those days, it used to be about it was about the iTunes chart in that particular thing and iTunes sales, and songs didn't stick around for as long as they do now. And actually, there's just been a change in the ARIA chart, which is going to be significant, which is finally they've been like, well, if a song's more than 2 years old, it can't be on the ARIA charts, And because you still have things like Riptide, Mr. Brightside, So, you know, we songs by The Weeknd, songs that are just really, really old are still on the charts, and it's become more of a sort of...
Because people keep playing them and playing them, so they're still...
Yeah, but the whole...
But no new music's breaking through.
Yeah, the idea of the ARIA charts, initially, it's a promo tool for record companies and artists. That's what it's for, and that's what it's always been for. Like when I used to watch Countdown, I'd watch the top 10 and I'd be excited to see what the top 10 was. And if there was, you know, the Radiators or Icehouse or Mondo Rock or someone was on the top 10, I'd be like, oh, they're a big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there were all sorts of ways that record labels could kind of finagle it so that their artists could get on the charts.
Yeah, if you get a quiet week, you only have to sell 1,000 copies.
Yeah, and maybe they buy all the records themselves. I mean, there were things that...
The buyback system.
Yeah, there were things that happened, but that's kind of what the point of the ARIA charts was. It was so that, you know, forever the charts have been a big deal for kids. I mean, maybe a little less now, but certainly when I was growing up, what was on the charts mattered, and if there's something showed up on the charts that you hadn't heard of, you'd pay attention to it. And then radio would pay attention to it, radio would play it, and there was a cycle. Now you can't get on the charts, so radio's like, well, it's not happening, you know, and then nobody hears it. And this is kind of what's changed. Like the charts...
Where does TikTok figure in all of this?
Well, yeah, that's been an interesting phenomenon in that, you know, you'll see such random things pop up on the charts, like, you know, Fleetwood Mac Dreams is a classic example. You know, suddenly Fleetwood Mac is back on the charts with Dreams, and I'm like, why the fuck is this? Why have kids suddenly discovered this? And then you realize there was a TikTok phenomenon where some guy was skateboarding and drinking a drink or some shit, you know, while listening to Fleetwood Mac Dreams, you know, and everyone's watching this and now they know this song, you know. But I mean, I see it even with my 9-year-old daughter, is that she'll come to me.
Well, I had James Johnston on the podcast, and he said that he was on to that side of things with country music very early, and there wasn't much country music on TikTok.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest things that really helped propel his career.
Yeah. It's interesting. My 9-year-old came to me the other day and said, because she's always asking for things to be added to her playlist, you know, her favourites playlist. And she said, can I have pop music, I think it's called?
By M.
Yeah. And I
From
checked.
the 80s.
Yeah, I checked. I mean, do you mean pop music by M? She said, I don't know who it's by. So I played a pop music by M. And she's like, yeah, that's it. I'm like, you know, that's from like 1980, right? And she thought it was a new song, but it had just been showing up in various TikToks and YouTube shorts, you know? This is an interesting phenomenon, is that kids don't have a clue what era songs are from. Like it used to be more of a thing of like, well, we were very aware of what was a new song and what wasn't a new song, because we'd have the charts and we'd have radio, and you'd have your radio that's playing new songs, your radio that's playing old songs, but we certainly knew.
Also, too, I mean, I remember when I was young, you could definitely tell older era songs, even stuff like, I'm talking the 80s, the 70s was so different. And
it was a totally different
sound.
Yeah, and that's also a huge thing. And interestingly, pop music by M's a relatively, still sounds quite fresh. I just listened to it and I'm like, okay, I could see how something like this could potentially come out today, you know? And somebody pointed that out to me. Like I was listening to Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams, and I'm like, this could almost come out now like this, you know? And somebody said, what you're responding to is the modernity of the synths and the drum machines, you know? There was kind of a point, I suppose it was in the early 80s, when, you know, as we were talking about before, about synths and drum machines.
Well, I remember 1984, DX7 came out, and Howard Jones was doing all of that stuff. And the synth was huge.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, because those sounds still exist now, I mean, a lot of stuff I'm doing now is like, has swung back around, and it's really 80s influence, and people want, you know, all those kind of synth sounds and all that sort of stuff. It's sort of like... And I suppose recording technology and mixing got to a certain point where the fidelity is roughly equivalent to what it is now. I mean, obviously there's been some advancements, but effectively, if I listen to a Bob Clearmountain mix from the 80s, like a Tears for Fears record or something like that, to me, a lot of those records still sound about as good as they could. You know what I mean? Like you could remix them now and they would not sound better. But yeah, I think maybe prior to, you know, 1980, I mean... a lot of records probably don't sound as good as that, you know, or the ones that do had an incredible amount of time and effort lavished
Steely
on them.
Dan, maybe.
Yeah, Steely Dan and maybe Fleetwood Mac and these kind of things that were, you know, or some of the Quincy Jones records or whatever. People that were really, but you know, I think once the 80s came along, it was like, well, you're playing this Lynn drum machine. It sounds good already. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be an engineer. And this is probably what's been happening with music in general, is a lot of the things that were very hard initially are now a lot easier. And that's it. That's even true for now, like when it comes to, you know, getting a reasonable vocal sound or getting things in tune or all these sort of things. And this is something I focus on as a producer, is that I realize that if someone else can do it really easily, then it's not really worth very much, you know? Like if I can get a vocal and I can put auto-tune on it and it's basically in tune, anyone can do that, big deal. I've done nothing. You know what I mean? If I can program up some drums and do a virtual drum kit and it sounds awesome, big deal. Anyone can do that, you know? I'm always very aware of the things that I'm doing that have real value. And every year those things change, you know? And I think that's true for any musician, is that kind of what used to be, some things that used to be hard are not as hard as they were, and more people can do them. And I mean, I even look at that, like I used to, you know, have aspirations to be a great shredder and all of that sort of stuff on guitar. And I mean, I still go to YouTube at night and watch a bunch of guitar porn and, you know, people do incredible sweep picking and all sorts of cool shit. And I think, well, if there's that many people that are doing it, obviously they had to practice a lot, but it's not that special now.
No, it's not that special.
And I could learn to do that, but what have I done? You know, I've got to find the things. I mean, this is right for any person trying to attempt a music career. You've got to find the things that you do that, as much, like, very little in this world is unique, but as much as possible, what's unique about what you're doing. And I've always thought what's unique about what I do as a producer is my song crafting and the way I help people more to get more out of their material, you know, and spend more time with their vocals, more time just generally making it the best it can be. And trying to spend less and less time on the things that anyone can do. Trying to systematize those things, trying to get those things out of the way to spend more time on the things that are going to matter. And I think that's where I've been rewarded in general, you know.
Yeah.
That's where it's really worked out for me, you know.
If you had to pick a highlight of all of the things that you've done, what would that highlight be?
There are probably two things. One is one time we went to, so it was 2015, we went to LA, and Sheppard were doing the closing spot on this thing called the Radio Disney Music Awards, which was at the Staples Center in LA. And we were doing a mashup with Shawn Mendes. So it was his song and Geronimo. And initially the Shawn Mendes producer was going to handle it, and then he got sick or couldn't do it. And they said, Stuart, we need you to handle it. And I was just in LA. I had a archaic laptop, and I somehow had to put this mashup together in this hotel room that was going to go out to like millions of people the next day, you know? Yeah. And somehow I pulled it together, and then I was on this email chain with like 25 Disney executives. It was really high power stuff. And they're all like, oh, maybe we should do this and this and this. And I'm like, guys, I'm lucky to even fucking get this done. Anyway, we got that done, and yeah, we did that thing, and I was like on stage with, or I was at backstage with Scooter Braun, who was the manager of Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande and all those people, and Jennifer Lopez was there, and Chuggy was there, and the band was there, Shawn Mendes was there, and I'm like, if this is as far as I get, I'm really, really happy, you know. And then the performance went off without a hitch, and it was awesome. And then the next night I was in New York for a different thing, and I was just watching the hotel TV, and then that comes on TV, and I'm like in New York, that's on TV, and I happened to like turn it on at the point that song came on, and I'm like, fuck, if there's a universe or a God, this is like, it's all shining down on me right now, you know. The other thing was probably working on this Lee Kernaghan movie. So I did the recording and mixing for his live concert movie that came out a few years ago called Boys from the Bush. So it was kind of half concert movie, half kind of documentary. Mm-hmm. And we did the filming at the Tivoli. And
that's a great venue.
Yeah, and it was sort of my responsibility to capture all of those songs and then go and work on the post-production and the mixing and all that sort of stuff. And then to go and see that in a cinema and hear it and see it and experience it was just like, I don't know, it was just another one of those very cool things. I mean, a lot of what I do is very solitary. Yeah. And that was one thing where I got to work with a huge team of people, editors and post-production people and all sorts of stuff. I was just one member of a team, but the part that I was doing was also really, really important. And to go and hear that in the cinema and hear it sounding so good and just be like, wow, that was so much work, but
it was worth it.
This is awesome. And, I was sharing it with a bunch of people that are obviously really big Lee Kernaghan fans. And just to see them really enjoying it, because that's another thing I don't get to see that much. Like I'm in my room, music goes out there, people kind of like experience it how they do. I don't see that part, but to see something translate like that, that was a really exciting experience. So yeah.
Along the way, there are certain things that don't go well, and because nothing's always sunshine and roses.
Yeah.
What's something that's either through a decision that you made or something that's happened along the way that hasn't gone well, and what did you learn from that?
I don't want to make it seem like everything's gone well. Look, I suppose I have more of a philosophical answer to that, which is you've kind of got to ride the roller coaster of the music business, you know what I mean? Like it's not all highs. I mean, I might go a couple of years where nothing major seems to pop out, and I might go a couple of years where lots of things seem to be happening all in a row, I think I guess for me, it's just about, you just got to keep showing up and you just got to keep throwing something out there. You've just got to keep being part of it and realizing you can only control what you can control, Like you've just got to, I think what it is, you've got to value your effort and your process and your dedication more than the results, because people, particularly for me, I just want to make the best songs I possibly can with the best people I can make them with. And then what happens after that is largely out of my control, To some degree, it's within their control, the artist's control, like so in terms of how hard they'll promote it or what they're willing to do for it. But sometimes the momentum's in your favor, the climate is in your favor, and sometimes it isn't, And I think I've noticed with the artists that I work with, they sort of beat themselves up too much about, oh, nothing's happening for me or nothing's happened for me. But I try to remind them, look, you've done really good work. That's what counts, Do the best work you can, present it honestly, present it enthusiastically, present it confidently, use all the levers at your disposal, pull them all, and see what happens. And then if this isn't the time for that song, if it doesn't work this time, don't take it so personally. It's hard not to.
It is hard,
but don't. And I've just had to. I guess I've had the benefit of doing it long enough that I can see that in more of the fullness of time. There's been projects I've worked on where I thought, fuck, I've really got this one. I've really nailed this. This has to be something, And I've sent it out to the industry, sent it out to managers or record labels, and just crickets, like nothing. We got nothing back at all. And other times I just thought, okay, this one's pretty good, and it just something happened. Somebody grabbed it, You think you can kind of predict how people are going to take something or what they're going to see in it. But, the experience I've had with music is that people hear it so differently.
Yeah.
My wife comes to me with, a Bryan Adams song, and she's like, God, how good is this song? And I'm like, oh, fuck, I wish this song didn't exist. I can't take it. I wish it would be deleted from history. I don't want to ever hear it again, But she's there, like, she'll watch this, like Bryan Adams is doing Heaven live, and she's almost in tears. And I'm like, oh, can you turn that off, please? Like people, like, and the other thing I've noticed about music is people can be so confident with their opinion of it, and they just can't understand why you don't feel the same.
Oh yeah.
Or look, even with their interpretation of lyrics, I've noticed this is a funny thing, you know, like people be like, oh, he's singing about this and this and this, and they're so confidently going off on their particular dream with those lyrics that they can't believe that you aren't going with them on that, you know. So anyway, I guess that's
it's a very individual thing.
Yeah, and I think that you've just got to continue to do good work, put it out earnestly, but don't take the results so personally. Just realize, for a start, everything is stacked against you in this industry. Everything is made almost impossible at every level, you know. The people that succeed are the people that are talented, for sure, but also dedicated, you know. Dedicated and will continue to put out product, continue to put out music.
Tenacious.
Yeah, and waiting and realizing that they're planting seeds, you know. And I think this is what I've realized with my career is, you know, sometimes things might not seem to immediately have the results I thought, but then later on they do, you know. So yeah, it's realizing that you're playing a long game. But you know, it's funny, when I started back in 1999 as a professional producer, and I thought, you know, in a year or two I'll be recording Britney Spears. Yeah. Like that, that was honestly because it was one of those things. If you don't know what you don't know, like that sort of incompetence, but not realizing it. And I think, I mean, if somebody had told me at that point, look, it'll be another 15 years before you have a genuine #1 hit to your name. It'll be 15 years. I'd be going, fuck this, I'm out. I'm not doing it. You know, I don't. Well, maybe I wouldn't. I was so addicted to it. I probably had to do it.
Well, I guess that's the thing. You know, you've got to be able to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, and I mean, I had a amazing time with amazing people along the way to that #1. You know, and I've had many amazing experiences since. And I don't think there's any other industry where I could have had anything like that. Mm-hmm. But it's like the other day I was recording a band, and you know. I'm not sure what will become of this music that we're doing, but the guy's doing this guitar solo and I'm kind of giving him this direction and that direction. And I sort of had just a moment of like, you know, if 9-year-old me could see me now, I'd be happy. Yeah. I'd be happy with where I got to. You know what I mean? Like beyond anything else, like this is what I'm doing each day. Yeah. This is what I'm doing for a job. And yeah, it was important.
You've done quite a few different styles of music, and you obviously had a lot of influences of different styles of music growing up. What's your favorite style of music to listen to right now?
Yeah, I really couldn't say. You know, I made a commitment to myself probably 10 years ago that every week I would try to listen to 50 new songs every week. That's
a big thing to do, 50.
Yeah. So effectively, I have various Spotify playlists that I follow, which are new music. I compile those, prioritize those, and I try to get through the 50 most important. And that was sort of a game changer in terms of how I don't need to do anything else to stay current than do that. Mm-hmm. That's all I need to do. Because I think what so many people do is they just like they're still listening to their favorite records from when they were 18, you know?
I have this funny theory, and I have asked several people about this, but my favorite year in music is from when I was 14, 1978. Mm. What's your favorite year in music? If you had to go back and go, that particular year is...
Yeah, that's...
What were you listening to when you were 14?
14, I think I was pretty heavy into like Guns N' Roses, AC/DC, maybe some Metallica, kind of getting into a little bit of more of a metal phase. But I think most of my teenage years were occupied by metal and guitar music and stuff like that. But I think probably the most inspiring time for me musically would be the 90s. like kind of around my uni days, like I was really into stuff like Fatboy Slim. I was really into like Tori Amos. I was into a really wide variety of stuff, but I was into it very deeply, you know.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to pin down any particular style that I love the most. I mean, you know, there's a lot of jazz stuff I listen to. There's country stuff I listen to. There's still metal stuff I listen to. I've just always seen it as like, what's a really good example of that style, you know? It hasn't ever even really been about artists for me or particular singers. It's always been about that song and that particular mix and that composition of sounds. And I've always seen it like that. Like what, you know, like if you look at my Spotify favorites list, it's all over the place, from all over. There's songs from now, there's songs from 1972, there's Beatles songs on there. And I feel like that's kind of your... It's natural for me because I'm presented with so many different types of artists, and if they're a great country artist, I don't want to not do it because I don't understand country or I'm not a big country fan. Likewise, if they're a really good metal band, I want to do it. You know what I mean? Like if it's good. So yeah, I've kind of become agnostic about that sort of thing where I don't really. I think the thing that I maybe do best, if I was to sum it up, would be commercial music, broadly. Like, if you want to do something that's really indie and really weird, that's too weird for Triple J, is probably only on 4ZZZ or something, you know what I mean? Like, it's probably not for me, because I'm primarily about hooks and ear candy and earworms and what brings people back. Like, I guess I've just never seen a point in making a song unless there's a good chance that lots of people want to listen to it, you know? Whatever people say, like the most popular Metallica songs or even the most popular Slayer songs, they have hooks.
Yep.
They've got catchy riffs, you know, and the metalheads might not know that or accept that, but that's the reason why that song's the most popular, you know? That little Slayer riff is really catchy, you know?
Yep.
And I'm always looking for what's catchy, what's hooky. And I think that's probably the first thing I'm doing whenever I'm trying to sum up an artist. When they bring me a bunch of, like a slate of demos, I'm like, where are the catchy bits? Everything else can be fixed, but where are the hooks? Where are the melodies? Where's the thing that makes me, where's the ear candy, you know?
When you're producing stuff, how often in your mind is the adage, don't bore us, get us to the chorus? I think some people are a little too excited by that. I mean, I think the chorus has to pay off in the right way. That's how I see it. Mm-hmm. Like the chorus, you have to earn the chorus in that there has to be the right build so that when it hits, it's big,
you know, it really feels satisfying. So, I mean, yeah, I don't have a thing of like, oh, the chorus must hit in 45 seconds or it must hit whenever. But, and also I tend not to really like songs that start with the chorus because it can be difficult then to get the journey back on board, you know what I mean? Like if you've kind of kicked off with the chorus, then you have to sort of come back here, and usually the first chorus after that won't kind of hit as hard because you've already heard this part. To me, it's all about the build to it, you know? But I definitely won't waste time when I'm arranging a song, as in, you know, if an intro could be 4 bars and it's currently 8.
So going for the big 16-bar intro of the 70s?
Yeah. I mean, like, I'll occasionally do something that's a little more indulgent, but it has to be specific to that genre.
It's interesting. I mean, you know, you mentioned the Dire Straits song "Money for Nothing." Would a song like how do you feel about that a song like that would go being released today?
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because to me, it's funny when I listen to that. I'll sometimes listen to it and I'll turn it off after the intro. Because the intro is iconic. The intro is just incredible. That build-up is unbelievable. I almost feel like it's a piece of music in itself. You know, it's independent of the song. But it's something that I always used to notice when I was playing covers gigs. Is there are certain songs where the intro is so good, and you'd see people in the crowd go, "Oh yeah,
Yeah,"
and they'd jump up, you know, and they'd be like ready to dance. And about halfway through the song, they're like, they kind of lost the enthusiasm. But it was the intro was so good. It was like Spirit in the Sky is one thing I always think about. That has just like, whenever that song comes on, I'm like, this is the fucking coolest sound I've ever heard. But about, you know, a minute into it, I'm like, oh, okay, right, yeah. No, I've already had the exciting bit. No, that's an interesting thing. And the
only reason I guess I ask about that is because we live in a world now, it's instant satisfaction.
Yeah.
And the 15, we listen to a song and it's 15 seconds or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It's almost like the advertising world has crept into the music industry.
Yeah. Well, on a few of the Sheppard records that we've done, we had basically an intro track, which was about a minute and a half long. It was an instrumental track. I think we did that two or three times. And it almost functioned like the Dire Straits intro, but it was a discrete track. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't going to be part of, like, we had this song Coming Home that did quite well. And that, on the album, it has an entire 1.5 minute intro. So I guess I have done that from time to time, but it was always going to be like, well, this will not be heard.
It'll be a separate part.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine that kind, like me deliberately doing that kind of thing, you know? The other thing is, like, you would put an enormous amount of time into something like that Dire Straits intro. Like, the craftsmanship in spreading it out that long, but having the build is amazing, you know?
It is.
And it still electrifies me to this day. But it's the incredible payoff when the riff comes in by itself. And as I said, that was the moment for me where I went, I need a guitar, you know?
That half-cocked wah sound, like it's... It's
yeah.
not the sort of thing that you would pick.
Yeah, it's
like, it's just become such an iconic sound, but it's like, it's that getting back to that thing of like going, well, if you had to pick that as being a great guitar sound, it wouldn't be the first choice that you'd make.
Yeah, and it wasn't even necessarily what Mark Knopfler did or was known for, you know? He was much more known for his clean Strat, Sultans of Swing kind of thing. And suddenly he's got a Les Paul and he's doing this half-wire janky sound, but yeah, it's perfection. But yeah, I guess you've got to be realistic. And I mean, I noticed this when I'm playing songs in the car with my daughter, and her attention span's just pathetic. You know, it's like, fuck, you know, like she's zoning out much quicker than I would have expected. You know, and I suppose it's just the nature of. There's so much immediate content, you know, like, I mean, I've been making a few sort of Instagram, TikTok reels, and I'm constantly told, or sometimes told by people, they're too slow. They've got to be faster. You've got to get all the hooks up front, you know, you've got to come and go, guys, you want to write an amazing chorus, you know, and I'm a little bit like, I don't really want to be part of that world yet. I want a world where people want to listen, you know, and they want content. But I've always subscribed to the idea that, if you have something interesting to say that's got value to people, they'll listen. You know, they'll take the time to listen. If they're just doom scrolling and they've got no interest, then, you know, they're just looking for funny cat videos or what they're looking for.
What's the latest one? The Bigfoot.
Yeah. But I think that's the same with music, is that the people that will be fans of a certain style may want to go deep on something.
Yeah.
I don't do much reggae, but I did this reggae project with a guy, and there was like this 16-bar section in the middle where it's just going dum 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 dum, and I'm like, what's this bit for? What's going on here? He goes, it's just a bit for people to groove on. I'm like, groove on? What? He's like, yeah, people just need to feel their drugs in this part, you know? I'm like, oh. But for that genre, it was appropriate.
Yeah.
You know, it's not meant to feel rushed. You can talk about song lengths as well as another aspect of it, where I'm seeing plenty of songs come out now that are sub 2 minutes, you know. It's gone back to the Beatles era. Plenty of songs that are 2.5 minutes, and not that many songs that are coming out that are more than 3 minutes. And
I guess radio would love that for advertising.
yeah, and
I mean, that was the whole point back then, I think, when the short songs, because radio. I mean, that's one of the reasons why they thought Bohemian Rhapsody would never be a hit.
Yeah.
No one's going to play that. Who's going to play a song that lasts for 6-7 minutes?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing in that, you know, how long should a piece of content be, you know? And this goes for this has been an interesting thing in the YouTube era, even because it's like, how long's a YouTube video? It can be anything.
Oh man, I've got a podcast that I'm editing at the moment that goes for over 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to work out how can I make that 1 hour and not cut out any.
Yeah,
because I'm aware that if the podcast goes too long, people just look at it and go, "Oh, that's too much. I can't sit through that."
But it's the same thing with songs. It's sort of like, how long is a song meant to be, you know? And I kind of grew up in an era where it was like a song's meant to be 3.5 minutes, but often went quite a bit longer. Like a 5-minute Tears for Fears song was fine, you know?
Yeah, I guess. And then there was the single or the radio edit.
Yeah.
Because they always had a radio edit that was shortened.
Yeah.
Cut the guitar solo off the end of Hotel California.
Yeah. Well, I even remember in the Geronimo era, we were told by the UK rep over there, he said, your song's 3:39, Radio 2 will not touch this unless it's 3:30. Find 9 seconds to cut. And we're like, there's nothing to cut. There's nowhere to cut it. And eventually, I don't know, we trimmed a little bit off the end, a little bit. I don't know how we got there. We got some down to 3:30. And, but there's a classic story. I forgot the band, but they were told a similar thing. They didn't cut it. They just wrote 3:30 on the sleeve and sent it over. I don't know. We might have done something like that too, but I don't know if we could do that in that era. But it's an interesting thing where there's a lot of songs now where it's literally verse, pre-chorus, chorus, verse, pre-chorus, chorus. Second chorus is, and that's it, you know? There's no bridge, there's no even third chorus.
Well, a lot of that, I guess, comes out of the whole looping era stuff, you know? And like, that's an odd thing to go through too of, yeah, 3 chords and the truth.
Yeah, I just think it's kind of like people can sort of absorb the whole song. There's also the aspect of you want people to go back and play it again, you know, because what counts more in this era now is repeat plays. So you kind of want to give people enough to get them hooked, but then you want them to play it again.
Well, you need hidden little Easter eggs.
Yeah.
So they need, it's like, I didn't hear that the first time through.
Yeah, but it's like if you give them 4 choruses, maybe they're satisfied, you know? If you give them 2 choruses, maybe they're not quite satisfied and they'll play it again. So there's some psychology there.
Yeah.
But I think in general we're just trending towards shorter songs, tighter arrangements, and it just comes down to, I mean, I don't want to go on and on about attention spans. I think it's kind of a bit of a cliche because I think people will dedicate attention to whatever they're interested in, and it might be all day if they're really interested. And I don't think kids are any different. It's always going to be the same. But with so much choice of entertainment, and they're listening to your song as a new artist and it's a new song, you can't expect too much generosity. There's less generosity than there was.
Yeah.
You know, I'd put it like that.
There's a lot of competition for people's time.
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of different things. Is there something that you haven't done that you really, really want to do? Someone that your dream person to work with.
Yeah, look, I guess the thing that I had an opportunity to do in 2015 that I didn't quite take was to move to LA, get involved in the whole sort of songwriting machine, high-level pop production world, you know? And I still have my mind on doing that someday, you know, like going over there, setting up a room and just writing on spec with whichever artist wants to come through, you know. It's kind of a high pressure, possibly very low returns world though, you know, because the way that works.
Is there a lot of people doing that?
Oh yeah, there's plenty, but the way it works is that people, you know, you do it all on spec, you know. So you might, you might get Sabrina Carpenter walk through one day. She might give you a go, and she'll give you one day. You write a song, you come up with a song. Maybe they put that out on the album. Maybe they don't. But if they don't, that song's gone, and you lost a day. And the next day you'll try to get someone else come in and someone else. But when you land one, then it apparently pays for all of the time that you spent trying to land one. But you may never land one. But to genuinely for me to get into that kind of, those kind of leagues, I'd have to be willing to move somewhere like that and do that. And it's been kind of a decision I've made over time. I thought about it a lot in that era when I was younger, before I'd had a child and, was a bit more settled in life. But I think I decided in the end that I'm less about kind of ambition and being the biggest thing, and more about what the lifestyle is. Particularly now, I'm a bit more like, well, I'd rather work with kind of at a relaxed rate with people I enjoy working with, helping them get to where they want to get to, and they'll be really appreciative at the end. It's kind of like probably the best part of my job is when I get to the end of it and I have people going, oh my God, I'm so happy with what we've got, and you wouldn't get that in that Sabrina Carpenter world. You'd get a bunch of people that are like, oh, it's good, but maybe it should be this or it should be that, or I don't know, we might do something with it. Oh no, we're not doing anything with it. It's just endlessly, it's quite an empty kind of corporate high pressure world. And I sort of figured that's not what I did this for. I never did this to be rich or famous or anything. I just did it like most musicians because I just had to do it. I mean, there wasn't kind of anything else that ever excited me like that, And I've been lucky enough to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I think I've been able to do it for all of this time and only this. I don't do anything else. I haven't done anything else for 25 years, And I'm kind of at the point where I couldn't do anything else.
I can relate to that.
Like if I have this experience with a lot of musicians. They get to a certain point where they've done it so long that they're like, well, if it all ended tomorrow, what would you do? And they're just like, I don't have any other skills.
Yeah.
I have nothing. I mean,
Because it does take a long time to develop those skills too. And you pour so much heart and soul into them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I have a Bachelor of Business from the 90s that's completely meaningless now, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have anything else much that I can do or contribute to the world, and I guess I'm lucky to be able to continue to do it. But I think I've worked out that what I do really well is help develop kind of beginning artists, That's the thing. I mean, I may not, I may be able to come up with a song that's as good as Max Martin and those guys in LA. Maybe I can do that. But what I think I'm kind of here for, I'm not spiritual, but what I think I'm contributing the most to the world is when I have new artists and they're completely green. They have everything wrong, but they just have a seed of something good, And I can go, there's the seed. Let me help you carve this out. And
build it into something.
Yeah. Look at what we have. And then they realize, okay, wow, there's a whole other world of musical ability that I can kind of tap into. I just need the right assistance, And I think that's my niche. I think, and I've realized I'm actually really happy with that world because it's sort of like, in the end, like any success I've had has been good and it's been validating, no doubt. But day to day, what I really enjoy is just that connection with the artist and then having them at the end feel like we came up with the thing that was in their head. They didn't know how to get there. Well, they didn't even know how good it could be. Maybe they had this in their head, but it was really like, could be like this, And that kind of... that feeling that they really appreciate what you did for them. And I think about that. It's like, if you're a dentist, you would have a miserable life because all you were ever doing for the most part is giving people bad news. You know what I mean? And you're just doing stuff. You're doing a useful thing, but nobody really wants you to do it, And I feel like my job's so much. This is why I think I'm a generally positive and happy person, is because most of what I see are people that are they're really happy to be in the studio, working on music. They're not doing their day job or whatever they're doing. They're here doing the thing that they love
Yeah.
and have dreamed about doing at this kind of level. And then to get them to get their recording to where they hoped it would be.
Yeah.
It's a dream. I mean, I've had people cry, just like really in tears, you know, and sometimes I get a bit teary too, because it's just, it's that's a real privilege, you know, and that's kind of what keeps me excited about it, you know? Yeah.
Well, at that point, I want to say thank you very much for coming and spending some time with me today.
Thank you.
It's much appreciated.
Cheers, mate.
And I will see everyone on the next podcast.
Thanks, mate.
That'll be great.
Yeah, that's a good one.